Welcome to the Rimo3 podcast.
We're much more aware of it. Now your average everyday user is like, oh, hey, why can't I get this thing? Well, they're now more aware of these problems. You see stuff like the Log4j issues that we saw recently,
Right.
where just massive, massive problems that we're struggling with addressing. And on that topic, what are some of the main concerns people face in discovering those vulnerabilities?
So, I mean, the biggest thing is I know kind of like what Rimo3 is focused on, which is kind of that automation and testing, is getting the patches out. So many places that I do audits of, and I've done audits of some huge companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, and their VDI image hadn't been updated in months, in some cases even years.
Wow.
And it's because it's kind of the old Citrix analogy of we don't cook it, we just serve it. And so what that means is like you're not going to change the recipe. You don't want to mess with the recipe. No salt, no pepper, just cook it the way it is, serve it the way it is. And it's because every time they've applied a Windows patch 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 3 months ago, it blew something up. And they're just
Right.
like, all right, nope, let's not do it. Like, let's just keep going. And then as long as it's not a patch that the CIO heard about on CISO Online, I'm not going to do the patch because it's just like February 2022. Oh, what's in there? No big deal. It's only like 100 and something high security updates. We'll be fine, you know? And so that happens so often that it's just this huge delay. And you can't wait 30 days anymore. Some people would always be like N-1 of whatever that release is. And with the way patches and attacks are happening, insider threats, everything, you can't wait that long. You've got to have patch Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday rolled out to a system. Friday, Saturday, Sunday rolled out to some pilot systems. Monday, Tuesday, the next week, you should hopefully be about 50, 60% done. You know, you should be really close so that within 7 to 10 days, you're out. And we know there's always going to be systems that don't ET phone home. And it's like there's always that couple percent that are never going to get the updates. And that's because they're on the VPN at the house. And I mean, to
Right.
your point, the work from home stuff really caused a huge problem where some of these devices haven't been updated since they got sent home in March of 2020. And I've still seen that, like doing audits. I'm like, whoa. And then it's like, oh, but it's on their home network. Well, yeah, so is Fortnite and Tiger King and everything else, right? Like who knows what's going on in that Wi-Fi network, right? What other devices, what IoT devices may have already been compromised? Yeah, patching is a huge thing and that compliance.
Well, for us too, Patrick, one of the things that we found, I mean, it's great that you're giving examples of the fact that people haven't patched in months, right? But if you look at an enterprise, even with their daily IT operations, you've introduced me to a couple of things in the past couple of months, right? Around CIS and compliance and governance bodies to get cyber insurance, which we'll touch on in a second. But one of the things that, was most interesting to me is, the number of, N plus 43 days. The fact that the typical enterprise, it takes 43 days from a day a patch comes out if they ever even deploy it, right? You're talking about the other end of the spectrum where people aren't deploying these patches unless they're high visibility for the CISO or the CI.
Yep.
Like, you're now in a situation where you're picking and selecting, which is a very dangerous game to kind of play, because you aren't necessarily the subject matter expert on every hot fix that's come out, the criticality of the bug or the security threat and posture.
Yeah, and you can't be now, right? Because
Yeah.
the one thing that I've found is, it's like OS patching is its own problem, right?
Oh, for
And
sure.
and, and it's so much, it's so often, and for a long time, people thought Macs were completely, invincible for these things, but
Right.
now they've starting to have a lot of CVEs too, and it's because wherever the money and the users are is where the attackers are going, right? And
Right.
so when I look at some of those businesses and how they're doing patching and not doing patching, it's like, okay, it's just asking for it. And, those every day you go past that and, that's just part of it. But the next part is, after OS is the application.
Right.
So if you're not updating those browsers like almost once a week or two, you're at a risk, and the risk varies between month. And I think that's the hardest part as an IT nerd, just in general, not even a security nerd, is keeping up. What's the things I need to know and I
Right.
need to do, because I'm just floating around in the ocean just trying to paddle, stay alive. There's some support tickets, close this, reboot that server, update that. Ooh, that broke, roll the update back. So I'm just treading water all the time. And so it's really hard for anybody to figure out what matters from the OS to the application. And then you've got application X, whatever you're using, whatever that main line of business application is. And I've seen people still stuck on Windows 7 because
Right.
of that application still,
Oh
like
yeah.
today. And it's
Mhm.
like, and they're not an oddball. It's actually pretty common. And so when you've got old applications and an old operating system, it's a recipe for disaster.
I agree. I mean, and for us, last plug here for Remo, but that's, one of the customers that we've actually focused on. We did take that testing time down from, the 43 days of manual testing and the deployment rings that you alluded to. Why do deployment rings when you can test against all images, leveraging automation and get it out by Friday, to all your endpoints, right? So regardless of that environmental change, when you started talking about sys and security controls, that's what got me really excited, because they're seeing that as a problem, right?
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you'd like to know more about Rimo3, head over to Rimo3.com or find us on LinkedIn as Rimo3 Cloud. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on what was discussed, future topics, and more. Use hashtag Rimo3podcast and your topics could be covered on the show. Until next time.